The baby's wail cut through the silence of first class like a knife. Heads turned, faces tightened. The air inside the cabin was thick with irritation. Thomas Whitmore, a self-made millionaire with a perfect tailored suit and a platinum watch, was sweating. His daughter, barely 1 year old, had been crying since takeoff. No bottle, no toy, no soothing whisper could stop the shrieks. Flight attendants leaned in with practiced smiles, but even they looked desperate. Passengers shifted in their leather seats, muttering. Some rolled their eyes, others covered their ears. Thomas, usually in control of billion-dollar deals, looked powerless. His wife, Vanessa, pale and exhausted, buried her face in her hands. The situation was spiraling. Then, from economy class, a figure appeared. A teenage boy. His clothes were worn, his sneakers scuffed, his eyes calm. He stepped hesitantly toward first class. The crew tried to stop him. "Sir, please return to your seat." But the boy raised his hand gently. He said nothing. He only walked closer to the crying baby. The baby stopped. Instantly, gasps filled the cabin. A silence heavier than the cries settled in. Every eye locked on the boy who, somehow, had done the impossible. Thomas stared at him, not just in shock, but with something else. Recognition. The cabin was frozen. 100 pairs of eyes, from first class to economy, turned toward the boy. He looked about 14. Dark skin, wiry frame, clothes too big for him as if handed down from an older brother. His sneakers were frayed at the edges, the soles peeling. But his posture was steady, his eyes unshaken. The millionaire's baby, Emma, had been shrieking so violently her tiny face was red, fists balled, tears streaking her cheeks. Yet the moment the boy stepped near, she stopped. No whimper, no hiccup, just silence. She stared at him with wide, curious eyes, as if she knew him. Gasps rippled through the cabin. A businessman muttered, "What the hell?" A woman clutched her pearls. Someone even clapped nervously. Thomas Whitmore didn't move. He just stared, stunned, at this kid who had succeeded where he and everyone else had failed. Thomas had faced hostile investors, courtroom battles, billion-dollar negotiations. None had rattled him like this. His jaw tightened. "Who are you?" Thomas asked, his voice a low growl, more suspicious than grateful. The boy didn't answer right away. He only held out his hand, not to Thomas, but to Emma. The baby gurgled, reached toward him. A soft giggle escaped her lips. Passengers whispered louder now, the scene morphing from annoyance to fascination. Vanessa, Thomas's wife, leaned forward. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, but something flickered in them. "Let him," she whispered. The boy glanced at her, then slowly touched Emma's tiny hand. The baby squealed with delight. Silence, replaced by a sound purer than any business deal Thomas had ever made. Laughter. The flight attendants exchanged looks. One of them, a young brunette named Kelly, frowned. "Sir, you need to return to your seat. This area is restricted." But Vanessa cut her off. "Please." Just a few minutes, her voice cracked, pleading. The crew hesitated. Technically, rules were rules, but the relief of an entire cabin was palpable. For once, first class was at peace. The boy sat quietly on the edge of Thomas's aisle, humming a low tune no one recognized. Emma nestled against his arm as though she had known him forever. Thomas's chest tightened. Something about the hum, the rhythm, the tone. It wasn't random. It was familiar. He couldn't place it, but it tugged at a memory buried deep. He snapped out of it. "What's your name, kid?" The boy hesitated, then said softly, "Malik." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Malik," she repeated, almost warmly. Thomas, however, wasn't smiling. His gut twisted. There was something in that name that scratched at his mind. The businessman across the aisle leaned in. "Kid's a miracle worker. You should thank him." Thomas forced a tight smile, but suspicion burned in his eyes. He didn't like miracles. Miracles meant loss of control. Minutes passed. The boy didn't move, didn't fidget. Emma slept soundly now, her head against his chest. The entire first-class cabin exhaled relief. For once, Thomas should have felt grateful. Instead, unease gnawed at him. Because when Malik looked up, meeting Thomas's gaze, his eyes weren't those of a stranger. They were sharp, knowing, almost challenging, like he wasn't just calming the baby, like he was sending a message. The flight attendant finally whispered, "Sir, please return to your seat." Malik nodded, gently handed Emma back to her mother, and stood. Vanessa hesitated, reluctant to let go, but Thomas pulled Emma firmly into his arms, holding her too tightly. "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly. Malik nodded again, his expression unreadable. Then he walked back to economy, disappearing behind the curtain. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the murmurs started. Who was that boy? How did he do that? Strange, isn't it? Thomas's mind spun. Something about Malik's face, his calm, his presence. It didn't add up. The hum, the name, the piercing gaze, none of it was coincidence. Vanessa shifted uneasily beside him. She wouldn't meet his eyes. And in that instant, Thomas knew. This wasn't over. That boy hadn't just silenced his daughter. He had awakened something buried, something Thomas had tried for years to forget. The jet lag should have hit him by now. Instead, Thomas Whitmore lay wide awake in his Manhattan penthouse, staring at the city skyline. Neon lights flickered through the glass walls, but all he could see were those eyes. Malik's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a 14-year-old boy. They carried weight, knowledge, accusation. Thomas rubbed his temples. Coincidence, he muttered. Just a coincidence. But the tune Malik had hummed still echoed in his skull. A lullaby. One Thomas hadn't heard in over a decade, not since the days when Vanessa used to sing it. Back when their lives were simpler. Back before everything changed. Vanessa entered the room quietly, cradling Emma. The baby was finally asleep, serene as if nothing had happened on the flight. But her mother looked shaken. "You're still thinking about him," she said softly. Thomas shot her a glare. "A strange boy calms our daughter in seconds when nothing else works. Of course I'm thinking about him." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. She avoided his eyes, stroking Emma's tiny hand. Maybe it was just luck. "Luck?" Thomas snapped. "No, that wasn't luck. That boy knew something. He knew us." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Vanessa froze. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, heavier than the skyline outside. Thomas narrowed his eyes. "You recognized him too, didn't you?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She turned away, walking toward the nursery. That was all the confirmation he needed. The next morning, Thomas did what he always did when faced with uncertainty. He mobilized resources. "Find out everything about that boy," he barked into his phone. His assistant, pale and nervous, scribbled notes. "Name's Malik. 14, African American. He was on flight 602 yesterday, seated in economy. I don't care what it costs. Background, parents, school records, DNA if you can get it." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, isn't that overstepping?" "Do it," Thomas snapped, cutting the line. But even as he slammed the phone shut, doubt gnawed at him, because deep down he already suspected the truth. That night, Vanessa sat in the nursery long after Emma had fallen asleep. The shadows of the rocking chair creaked against the floor. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a small silver locket from under her blouse. Inside, a faded photograph. A boy. Dark skin, wide smile. Not Malik, not exactly, but close enough. Her breath caught. 15 years ago, before she was Mrs. Whitmore, before the billions and the penthouses, there had been another life. a life she had buried, a mistake she thought she'd erased. But mistakes had a way of resurfacing. 2 days later, Thomas's investigator delivered the report. Thick manila folder, confidential stamps. Thomas's hands shook as he opened it. Malik Carter, age 14, foster care system since age 2, no stable guardians, exceptional academic records despite instability, multiple reports from teachers noting unusual composure for his age, musical talent, sings, hums tunes with extraordinary effect on infants and children, psychological notes, resilient, observed humming lullabies of unclear origin, current foster placement, Harlem Thomas's blood ran cold, 2 years old, foster system, lullabies. He slammed the folder shut, his breath ragged. He didn't need the DNA test. He already knew the boy was his. When he confronted Vanessa that night, his voice was low, dangerous. "You lied to me." She froze in the nursery doorway, the silver locket still dangling at her throat. "Thomas, you told me you'd handled it, that there were no loose ends." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought he was gone. They told me They lied. Or you did." The accusation cut through the room. Vanessa covered her face, sobbing. "I was young, Thomas. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't raise him alone. And then you came along and you buried the truth." His voice was ice. "You let me build this family on a lie. He wasn't supposed to come back," she cried. "He was supposed to have a better life, far away from all this. I never thought." But Thomas wasn't listening anymore. His mind raced, calculating the fallout. If the press discovered this, a hidden child abandoned by the billionaire's wife, his empire would crumble, stocks would plummet, enemies would devour him. And worse, Malik wasn't just any boy. He was a living reminder, a threat, a reckoning. That night, while Vanessa wept quietly in the nursery, Thomas stood by the window, staring out at Manhattan's glittering lights. In his reflection, he didn't see a billionaire. He saw a man cornered. Malik's face haunted him, his calm, piercing eyes. The way Emma had quieted instantly in his arms, as though blood recognized blood. Thomas clenched his fists. This boy wasn't just a problem. He was the past clawing its way back. And Thomas knew one thing with absolute certainty. The past had to be controlled or destroyed. For 3 nights in a row, Thomas Whitmore couldn't sleep. He paced the marble floor of the penthouse, glass of scotch trembling in his hand, replaying the same questions. Who knew about Malik? How much did Malik himself know? And what would happen if the truth spread beyond these walls? The empire Thomas had built wasn't just money and steel. It was reputation, control, the illusion of perfection. One fracture, one whisper of scandal, and everything could collapse. On the 4th morning, Thomas summoned his head of security. A bald ex-military man named Harris entered the office silently, posture rigid, eyes sharp. "I need surveillance," Thomas said flatly. "On a boy. 14, Harlem." His name's Malik Carter Harris didn't flinch. He had done darker jobs for Thomas before. "Standard monitoring?" "No," Thomas said, his voice tightening. "Full shadowing. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, discreetly, no mistakes. And if the boy resists?" Thomas's eyes hardened. "He won't." Not yet, meanwhile, in Harlem, Malik felt the shift before he saw it. He had always been attuned to changes others ignored, the way footsteps echoed differently on pavement, the subtle reflection of a man lingering too long in a store window. Someone was watching him. He didn't panic. He'd grown up in the foster system, where eyes were always on you, caseworkers, police, strangers judging from a distance. But this was different, more precise, more dangerous. That night, lying on his narrow bed under peeling paint, Malik whispered the lullaby again. not to soothe the baby this time, but himself. The melody was all he had left of his earliest memory. A shadowy figure humming as warm hands cradled him, a woman's voice, soft and trembling. He didn't know who she was, but lately he had begun to wonder if he was getting closer to finding out. Back in the penthouse, Vanessa sat alone in the nursery, the silver locket heavy in her palm. She hadn't confessed everything to Thomas. She couldn't. Because Malik wasn't just her secret. He was their secret. 15 years ago, in a small town outside New Orleans, she had made a choice. A desperate, reckless choice. And Thomas, back then just an ambitious young investor clawing his way up, had been part of it. She remembered the stormy night, the argument, the decision neither of them wanted to make but both agreed was necessary. She remembered the tiny cry, the way Thomas had looked away, unable to face what they were doing. And she remembered the promise. No one will ever know. Now Malik's face threatened to unravel it all. Thomas's surveillance yielded results within days. Harris delivered photos. Malik leaving school, Malik at a corner store, Malik humming to a crying toddler in the foster home. But one photo made Thomas's blood run cold. It showed Malik at a library, hunched over old records, birth records, adoption files. The boy was looking for answers. Thomas slammed the photo on his desk. He knows, or he's close to knowing. Harris tilted his head. Then the question is, do we let him find the truth or stop him first? Thomas didn't answer immediately. He stared at the boy's face in the photo, so sharp, so familiar. The jawline, the intensity, pieces of himself reflected back. For a fleeting moment, he felt something he didn't want to name, guilt, but it was quickly drowned by fear. We control the truth, he said finally, before it controls us. That evening, Malik was on his way home when a black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down. A voice spoke, calm, commanding. Get in. Malik froze, eyes narrowing. Who are you? The man in the back seat leaned forward, shadows hiding his face. But Malik didn't need light to know who it was. Thomas Whitmore. Malik's chest tightened. He had seen the billionaire's face in newspapers, on television, always distant, untouchable. Now here he was, summoning him like a king calling a servant. Instinct screamed at Malik to run, but something deeper, curiosity, defiance, fate, pushed him forward. He opened the door and slid inside. The ride was silent, the city lights blurring past. Thomas studied him carefully like a man examining his own reflection. Malik met his gaze with unnerving calm. You've been searching, Thomas said at last. For the truth, Malik replied. His voice was steady, older than his years. Thomas's jaw tightened. Some truths are better left buried. Buried, Malik echoed, his eyes sharp. Like me? The words struck like a blade. For a moment, Thomas faltered. This boy wasn't ordinary, he wasn't naive. He knew more than he should. You don't understand the world you're stepping into, Thomas warned. Power, money, they consume everything. Even family Malik's expression didn't change. He leaned forward slightly. Maybe. But lies consume more. The car slowed. Thomas gave a curt nod to Harris, who opened the door. Go home, Thomas said. His tone carried both command and plea. Forget what you're looking for. It will destroy you. Malik stepped out, but before the car pulled away, he bent down to the window. His words were quiet, but they sliced through the night. I don't scare easily, and I don't stop, not until I know why you abandoned me. The door slammed shut. The car drove off. Inside, Thomas sat frozen, Malik's words echoing in his mind. Abandoned. The shadows of the past were no longer shadows. They were flesh and blood, standing before him, demanding answers. And Thomas knew, sooner or later those shadows would consume them all. The private jet touched down in Miami. the humid air pressing in as passengers filed out. Samantha kept her designer sunglasses on, shielding herself from the flashing cameras waiting outside the terminal. Word had already leaked to the press. Mystery boy comforts millionaire's baby mid-flight. Reporters shouted questions. Who is the boy? Did he save your child? Is he your adopted son? Samantha ignored them, clutching Lily protectively. But Malik, still in his hand-me-down sneakers and too-big t-shirt, stayed close, confused by the attention. For the first time, the mask Samantha had worn for years, calm, polished, untouchable, began to slip. Inside the limousine, Malik stared at her. "Why were those people asking about me?" he asked softly. Samantha hesitated. The truth pressed at her lips, heavy and bitter. "Because they saw what you did for Lily. You were kind, and people like stories about kindness." But Malik wasn't satisfied. He could sense the shift in her tone, the way her voice cracked. Later that evening, in Samantha's oceanfront mansion, Malik wandered the vast halls, marble floors, glass chandeliers, walls filled with art worth more than everything his foster family had ever owned. But one painting stopped him cold. It was a portrait of a young woman, barely older than Malik himself, holding a baby in her arms. The resemblance was uncanny. The shape of the jaw, the curve of the smile, the same eyes that looked back at him every morning in the mirror. Malik's chest tightened. "Who is she?" he whispered when Samantha entered the room. Her face drained of color. For a moment, the mask fell completely. She's someone I knew a long time ago," Samantha said quickly. Too quickly. "A friend. She passed away." But Malik had seen enough lies in foster homes to recognize one. That night, during dinner in the grand dining room, Malik pushed his plate away. "You're lying to me," he said flatly. His voice didn't shake. Samantha froze. Her fork clattered against fine china. Across the table, Lily babbled happily in her high chair, unaware of the tension crackling in the air. "You think I don't notice?" Malik pressed on. "The way you look at me. The painting. The way you panic when people ask questions." Samantha swallowed hard. For 20 years she had built her empire, her image, her fortress of perfection. And now, in a single evening, a boy with nothing, no money, no power, was tearing it down. "I did what I had to do," she whispered, voice breaking. "I was young." "I was scared. I had no choice." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Malik's chair screeched back as he stood. His hands trembled, but his voice was sharp. "No choice? You left me. I don't even know who I am. You could have come for me, but you didn't." Samantha's mask shattered completely. Tears slipped down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. She reached for him, but he stepped back. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I was 16. Alone. My family, they wouldn't let me keep you. They made me sign the papers. And then, when I finally had the power to fix it, it was too late. You were already gone." The words echoed in the cavernous dining room. Malik's chest heaved. For years he had wondered why no one ever came, why every birthday felt like a reminder that he belonged nowhere, and now the answer stood before him. The woman the world admired, envied, and adored was the one who had abandoned him. At that moment, Lily's cries broke through the silence. Instinctively, Malik rushed to her, lifting her gently from the chair. The baby quieted in his arms, her tiny hand curling around his finger. Samantha watched, broken. She had spent millions on nannies, trainers, tutors, everything money could buy, but her baby calmed only in the arms of the boy she had left behind. It was the cruelest irony. The next morning, photos of Malik holding Lily filled tabloids. Mysterious bond between Millionaire's child and boy. Speculation spread like wildfire. Journalists dug into Malik's background, uncovering whispers of foster homes, files half buried, names that pointed back, inevitably, to Samantha. Calls flooded her office. Business partners demanded answers. Politicians distanced themselves. The empire she had built brick by brick began to tremble, and in the eye of the storm stood Malik, silent, watchful, waiting for the truth she still couldn't fully bring herself to admit. Samantha stared at the front-page headline that morning, "The Boy Who Stole a Millionaire's Heart." But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before the next headline would be far darker, "The Son She Abandoned." And when that happened, her mask wouldn't just crack, it would crumble completely. The Miami mansion no longer felt like a fortress. Samantha's phone buzzed relentlessly. Investors pulling out, board members demanding emergency meetings, journalists offering obscene sums for an exclusive. The empire she had sculpted with such precision was unraveling thread by thread. But the real storm wasn't outside. It was inside her home. Malik sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean, Lily asleep in his arms. The boy had barely spoken to Samantha since the night of the confession. Yet his silence was louder than any accusation. Every time she looked at him, she saw the 16-year-old version of herself signing those papers with shaking hands, praying no one would ever find out. And now the past was alive, breathing, staring back at her. By midday, helicopters circled overhead, their blades chopping the air. Photographers camped at the gates. On the news, commentators debated. Is he her secret son? Why hide him for so long? Does this mean her empire was built on lies? Samantha's PR team advised her to cut ties immediately. Deny everything. Say he was just a passenger on the plane. Pay him off if you have to. Don't let this ruin you. But when she glanced through the glass doors at Malik cradling Lily, she knew it wasn't that simple. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't just some boy. He was the one truth she could no longer bury. That night, Samantha found Malik in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. He looked up at her, eyes sharp, guarded. "I'm leaving," he said simply. Her chest tightened. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere that's not here. The world's already figured it out. I don't need your mansion, I don't need—" He stopped himself, swallowing the words that hurt too much. "I don't need you." Samantha stepped closer. "Malik, please. If you go now, they'll twist the story even more. They'll tear you apart." He gave a bitter laugh. "They've been tearing me apart my whole life. Foster homes, strangers, being forgotten. What's the difference now?" Her mask threatened to shatter again, but she forced composure into her voice. "The difference is, this time I can protect you." But Malik didn't want her protection. He wanted the truth. He wanted to know why a woman with the world at her feet had decided he wasn't worth fighting for. The next morning, the breaking news alert hit like a bullet. Documents leak. Billionaire Samantha Ward linked to secret child given up for adoption. Screens flashed adoption papers stamped with dates, names, and a signature. Hers. The mask was gone. The whole world could now see the face she had spent decades hiding. The board called an emergency session. Stock prices plummeted. Protesters stood outside her offices with signs reading, "Family First" and "Hypocrite." And through it all, Malik stayed silent. He hadn't asked for fame, hadn't sought the spotlight, but now he was at the center of a hurricane. That evening, unable to breathe under the weight of the headlines, Samantha drove Malik and Lily to the old pier just outside the city. The ocean stretched endlessly, the waves crashing like distant applause. "I don't care about the money," Malik said, finally breaking the silence. "I don't care about your companies or your fame. I just want to know." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you come for me?" Samantha's hands trembled on the railing. For the first time, there was no audience, no cameras, no lawyers, just her and the boy she had lost. "I tried," she whispered. "But every door was closed." By the time I had the power, they told me you were gone, shuffled into another home. They wouldn't tell me where. I thought, maybe it was better for you if I stayed away, that you could live without my mistakes haunting you. Malik shook his head, tears brimming. I didn't need perfect. I just needed you. The words sliced through her like glass. Lily stirred in Malik's arms, her tiny cry pulling them both back from the edge. He rocked her gently, and again, like always, she calmed. Samantha watched, torn. The empire she built was collapsing. Her name was mud in the press. But in that fragile, fleeting moment, watching her son soothe her daughter, she realized what was left to fight for. Not the empire, not the headlines, not the mask, but the family she had once lost and might still save. Back at the mansion, Samantha's lawyer waited grimly. You have two choices, he said. Deny him, cut him off, rebuild your empire without the scandal, or admit everything, claim him publicly, and watch the empire burn. Samantha looked at Malik, who stood silently in the doorway, eyes full of a pain she had put there. Her empire, or her son. The decision pressed down on her like the weight of the sky itself, and for the first time in 20 years, she didn't know which mask to wear, or if she had the strength to stop wearing one at all. The decision came not with a roar, but with a whisper. Samantha stood before the mirror in her private study, the lawyer's words echoing in her skull. Deny him, or claim him. Her empire, her crown of glass, balanced on the edge of collapse. For decades, she had fought to build something untouchable, but glass, no matter how beautiful, always breaks. When she finally stepped out to face the cameras, the world braced itself. The ballroom of the Ward Foundation gleamed with chandeliers and polished marble. Rows of journalists filled the seats, cameras blinking like electric fireflies. Everyone waited for blood. Samantha walked to the podium, Malik standing just behind her, holding Lily in his arms. Gasps rippled through the crowd at the sight. Her voice, steady at first, grew raw with every word. Yes, the documents are real. I was 16 when I signed them. I made a choice that has haunted me every day since. And today, I am done hiding. Malik is my son. A wall of flashes erupted. Reporters shouted, overlapping, their questions sharp as knives. Why hide him? Is this about protecting your wealth? Do you expect forgiveness? Samantha raised a hand. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask for the chance to begin again, with my children. Both of them. Behind her, Malik shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't agreed to be paraded in front of the world, but something in her tone, cracked, vulnerable, human, kept him from walking out. Within hours, stock markets responded with brutal efficiency. Ward Industries plummeted. Board members distanced themselves, releasing statements about leadership reevaluation. Former allies suddenly became vultures, circling the weakened titan. The crown Samantha had polished for decades lay shattered on the ground. But Malik noticed something strange. She didn't seem broken. If anything, she looked lighter. For the first time, the mask was gone. She spoke to him without calculation, without rehearsed words. I thought I'd feel ruined, she admitted one night, staring out at the city lights. But now I see I was already ruined. I just never let anyone look close enough to notice Malik's reply was soft, uncertain. So, what happens now? She turned to him. Now. We survive. Together. If you'll stay. The world was divided. Some branded her a fraud, a hypocrite who cared more for image than blood. Others saw courage in her confession, a powerful woman daring to expose her most private wound. Social media roared with hashtags, Ward Truth, Crown Shattered, Mother and Son. In boardrooms and back alleys alike, Samantha Ward became a cautionary tale, a queen dethroned by her own secret. But in a small Miami neighborhood, an old foster mother recognized Malik's face on television. She remembered the quiet boy who used to sketch oceans in the margins of his homework, the one who always asked why his real mother never came. And she wept. The press had their story, but Malik's story wasn't so easily written. One night, after the frenzy of cameras faded, he confronted her. "Do you know what it was like? To wonder every day why you weren't good enough? To be passed around like I was nothing? And now, suddenly, I'm supposed to believe in this?" His voice trembled, anger and sorrow entwined. Samantha didn't flinch. She let the pain wash over her. "You don't have to believe in me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But believe in yourself. Believe that you are more than the scars I left you with." For the first time, Malik saw not a billionaire, not a titan, not a mask, but a woman begging for one more chance. It was Lily who held them together. When Malik fed her, Samantha would watch silently, her heart breaking and mending all at once. When Samantha sang softly to calm her cries, Malik would listen, wondering if she ever sang like that for him when he was small. These fragile moments stitched them together. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough to keep them from falling apart completely. But outside their fragile cocoon, storms brewed. Whispers spread that rival companies were preparing to seize Ward Industries. Lawsuits loomed. Politicians distanced themselves. Even some family members emerged from the shadows, eager to claim their piece of the empire. And one night, as Malik scrolled through endless articles about the collapse, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A headline: "Mysterious benefactor funds investigations into Ward scandal." Beneath it, an old name surfaced, the father he had never known, the ghost Samantha never dared speak of. The past was not finished with them. Not yet. Samantha sat on the edge of her bed, crown shattered, empire burning. Malik stood at the doorway, Lily asleep in his arms. For the first time, they were under the same roof, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as something resembling a family. But shadows still lingered, and the question was no longer about what Samantha had hidden in the past. It was about who or what was coming for them next. The storm did not come in a single blow. It crept, coiled, and tightened. Ward Industries was no longer an empire. It was a carcass. Journalists clawed at it, investors carved their pieces, and rivals descended like wolves. Samantha, once untouchable, now lived under siege. And Malik? For the first time in his life, he was seen, not as a foster child, not as a whisper, but as the blood heir of a crumbling dynasty. That visibility was both a weapon and a curse. The headline had been no mistake. Behind the investigations, there was a name: Jonathan Hale. Samantha hadn't spoken it in 30 years. Malik had never known it. But the moment she saw it printed across the screen, her breath caught. Jonathan, his father. The man she had loved recklessly as a teenager, the one she had signed papers to erase, had resurfaced like a specter demanding retribution. And he wasn't alone. Backed by investors and attorneys, Jonathan now claimed Malik was his. That Samantha had stolen their son and buried the truth to protect her career. The irony: Samantha had hidden Malik to escape ruin, and now ruin had returned wearing Jonathan's face. They met in a private chamber, away from cameras. Jonathan was older, harder, but his eyes still carried the charm that once disarmed her. "You built an empire," he said, voice smooth, venomous. "But you built it on lies. And now, it's my turn." Samantha's hands clenched. "You abandoned us. Don't twist this into righteousness. I was young," he shot back. "You gave him away before I could even fight for him. Do you know what that did to me? Watching our son grow up in the system, while you sat in your penthouse pretending he never existed?" Malik, caught between them, felt his world split. He had spent years resenting Samantha's absence. Now here was another ghost, another parent, dripping with accusations and promises. "Stop," Malik cut in. "You both talk about me like I'm an asset on a balance sheet. I'm not your revenge, I'm not your redemption, I'm me. And you don't get to define me anymore." For a long silence, neither parent replied. That night, flames consumed the Ward Foundation's headquarters. Investigators whispered about arson, corporate sabotage, even Jonathan's possible involvement. But no proof emerged. To the public, it was symbolic. The empire Samantha had built was literally reduced to ash. Photographs of her standing before the smoking ruins became the image of her fall. But Malik noticed something in her face. Not despair. Resolve. "It's gone," she whispered, watching the embers drift skyward. "Everything I built. Everything I thought mattered." Maybe that's mercy. Malik didn't know if he agreed. But when Lily stirred in his arms, he realized the fire hadn't destroyed everything. Something new could still be built from the wreckage. The weeks that followed were a blur. Court battles raged. Jonathan fought for influence. Shareholders sued. But the public strangely shifted. Samantha's vulnerability, the image of her stripped crown, humanized her in a way her wealth never had. And Malik began to see her differently too. Not as a savior, not as a monster, but as something messier. A mother trying, failing, and trying again. Late one night, as they sat together in her half-empty penthouse, Malik asked, "Was it worth it? All of this? The empire? The secrets? The lies?" Samantha didn't answer right away. She looked out at the city, her reflection faint against the glass. "No," she admitted finally. "But you're worth it. Always were. I just didn't know how to believe it then." Her voice cracked. Malik didn't forgive her, not fully, not yet. But he no longer doubted she meant it. The empire was gone, but something remained. Samantha sold off the last of Ward Industries and funneled the money into a new foundation. Not for prestige, not for power, but for children like Malik once was. Kids forgotten by the system. Kids who needed someone to see them. And Malik? He found himself at the center of it. Not because Samantha asked, but because he chose. He wanted Lily to grow up in a world where scars didn't define futures. It wasn't redemption. Not entirely, but it was movement, forward instead of backward. On the anniversary of the fire, Samantha and Malik visited the charred lot where Ward Industries once stood. The ashes had long been cleared, but the echoes remained. Samantha reached down, scooping a bit of soil in her palm. Malik watched her, uncertain. "This ground," she said softly, "was built on lies. But maybe it can grow truth." Malik placed Lily's tiny hand over hers. For the first time, 3 generations touched the same earth, not as secrets, not as enemies, but as family. Behind them, the city buzzed with indifference. But in that small, fragile circle, crowns and ashes no longer mattered. What mattered was what survived. In the end, empires are not measured by towers or balance sheets. They are measured by what remains when the towers fall. For Samantha Ward, that truth came too late to save her crown, but not too late to save her soul. She had built a kingdom from steel and shadows, only to watch it burn in a single night. Yet, from the ruin, something unexpected survived. Connection. Not control, not dominance. Connection. Malik carried scars deeper than most could fathom, but scars are not just reminders of pain. They are proof of survival. For years he had been the ghost of someone else's choices, a boy erased on paper, invisible in flesh. Now he stood in the light, not as Samantha's secret, not as Jonathan's accusation, but as his own name. A father, a son, a man who had chosen to stop running. And Lily, the child who would never remember the fire, who would never know the empire's gilded walls, was the only legacy that mattered. Her laughter filled spaces where arguments once echoed, where silence once stung. In her past, betrayals lost their sharpness, softened into something bearable. People asked what had become of Samantha Ward. Some said she vanished, exiled by scandal. Others claimed she worked quietly, channeling her wealth into unseen causes. But those who looked closely would sometimes spot her at the edges of Malik's life, not as the titan she once was, but as a mother still learning how to be present. As for Malik, he no longer needed the Ward name, nor Jonathan's validation, nor the world's recognition. The ashes had taught him something more enduring, that identity is not given, nor stolen, nor inherited. It is built breath by breath, choice by choice, and so the empire of Ward ended. But in its place, something quieter began. No headlines, no crowns, just the steady, imperfect rhythm of lives rebuilt. Because in the end, the greatest power is not what you leave behind for the world. It is what you leave behind for those who love you. And that echo endures.